What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake NBA DFS Wise stream. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And of course, I am from the WiseTake Nation, which you can find on all the social media platforms listed above. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Please subscribe with notifications bell on. This way you are notified whenever we go live. We cover NBA, MLB Monday through Friday. We've got golf streams we do once a week, NASCAR streams. So all free here on the YouTube and Twitch channels. Make sure you follow, subscribe, whatever it is. And if you could like the video, it really helps us out. It really goes a long way. The likes allow us to continue to do the dirty on the YouTube, on the Twitch. Allows us to continue to do the free content. If you're looking for more help, obviously you can go check us out at WiseTake.com. We are a premium DFS content provider as well as a DFS community designed to help make you a better DFS player. We've got projections, cheat sheets, articles, all the things that you may need to succeed in the world of daily fantasy sports. Doing this solo today, just a quick FYI for the nation. I'm located in New Jersey, and we are currently being hit by that tropical storm. So if I lose power, which is a very strong possibility, I've lost it a few times already. The internet's gone up and down. Then that'll be the end of the stream. Those of you who are subscribed to WiseTake.com, I'm prepared to be in the Slack chat if that happens. For those of you subscribed with the monthly memberships or higher. Other than that, all the content's up, and I'll be able to update the content, from my phone, internet, and all that shit. So we're just going to go right into it. It should be a relatively quick show, not going to take us up to lock, because I'm trying to get through the show quickly to hope we can get it in. With that said, what up, Moochie Mob Tai? See you in the chat. What's going on, man? Bets and Nets value. Yeah, but we're gonna discuss the Nets. They're actually first of the first game, so a lot to discuss there. FanDuel did not raise the prices. DraftKings did raise the prices, so we'll have to discuss who we think is going to do well. But I mean, it's hard to imagine a world where you don't see a lot of Nets in the winning lineups and the optimal lineups, because there's still a full game that has to be played, right? So I know there's some players you're not familiar with, players you don't like, and it's going to be tricky to kind of figure out which ones, and we don't even know which ones are definitely going to get the run. A few we may, but obviously Brooklyn with no Dinwiddie, no Kyrie, they don't care, right? They're just resting all their dudes. Is what it is. Anyway, first up we've got the Brooklyn Nets visiting the Milwaukee. I keep saying visiting, but they're all in the bubble. Nets Milwaukee. We have a 231 total that's actually up from 229. Milwaukee is currently 18.5 point favorites. No surprise. We know the Nets are resting everyone. All their usual players are being rested. No LeVert. Nobody. No Joe Harris, Jared Allen. So we're still waiting on a lineup. We did just hear that Kuroix is expected to start at center. Remember, they already don't have DeAndre Jordan and a few people that didn't want to come in because of the coronavirus. All right, there we go. Jamal Crawford is going to play, but it sounds like he's going to be heavily limited. They have him on. I'll have to raise his projection a little bit, but I don't think significantly enough to where I plan on getting any. He's going to come off the bench, and he's going to play in short stints. I think he'll shoot a lot when he's on the court. Why not? But I don't know. Seems like there's better plays elsewhere. All right, so to get things started, Tyler Johnson's only 4K on FanDuel. He's 6'6" on DraftKings. I would imagine he gets pretty good run here. I've jacked up his minutes, and I may need to jack them up even more. 6'6" is kind of a rough price, but again, he's going to be in an unusual role, in a role that we've probably never seen him before. He's never played on a team where the caliber of players were this bad. And you can make an argument that his little stint on the Suns, right? But you still got Devin Booker. You still had other guys that he's sharing time with. It's a little bit different. We really don't have anybody that I think most people would consider good. So I think on FanDuel, it's certainly fine. The only issue on FanDuel is you've also got his teammate Chris Chiozza, who I prefer if I'm picking between the two. Chiozza's been more aggressive anyway, even with everybody else playing. He's also 4K. On DraftKings, he's the one that I prefer, I think, over there. And there's a pretty good possibility they both play on DraftKings. Tyler Johnson is shooting guard eligible. You have the utility spot. You have roster flexibility. So he won't necessarily, just because you're playing them or him, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to take away from the other guys. On FanDuel, if you're playing both of those guys, you're using both your point guard spots for a punt, and you do want ceiling somewhere, right? You're going to want some ceiling somewhere. So I think that You got Westbrook, Damian Lillard, all these guys. You're going to have to pick one. Again, I kind of prefer Chiozza. That's more so because I've seen Chiozza be more aggressive. But Johnson is the veteran of the two, right? He's the one that's been playing. Evidently, he must be some kind of better because people seem to. But even on a projection basis, Tyler Johnson with more minutes still doesn't project as well as Chris Chiozza. So I prefer Chiozza. Garrett Temple's another one to discuss on DraftKings at 5'8". Again, you're going to have to go out of your way to play him. I do expect him to be in a different role. I expect him to shoot a lot. He is also a veteran. Is it possible that they choose? We just don't have enough bodies. But that's the thing. We do have some bodies, right? Justin Anderson, this Musa kid, Jeremiah Martin. So there are some. Dante Hall. There are some lying around, right? And the two veteran guys, not including Crawford because he's on limitations, is going to be TLC, Timothy LeWoo, whatever, and Garrett Temple. So on FanDuel, he's shooting guard eligible. Similar situation, right? You have to pick one of the Garrett Temple, TLC over there because if you could theoretically play both if you're willing to not play Luka Doncic, not play James Harden. So it all comes with a sacrifice. You got to make the right decision. I think I prefer TLC personally. On DraftKings as well, I prefer TLC. Again, on DraftKings, it's not as much as a debate because you can play these guys and you're not really sacrificing as much because of the roster flexibility. I like that word. So, on FanDuel, on the one hand, you've got, they're like almost virtually locks because they're so cheap. On the other hand, DraftKings is where it's easier to play them from a roster construction standpoint. Kuroix. I think he seems like a no-brainer. If you were building a lot of teams, maybe you want to hedge with like a Dante Hall. Maybe set a group on an optimizer if you use one saying don't play them together because I would assume Kuroix sees a good chunk of minutes and he's going to be playing center, right? Centers are closer to the basket typically. They're relied on for rebounds. Maybe he gets a couple blocks. Whatever. Not really his game. Whatever. But usually centers are higher point per minute average players. Even if you have a guy who's not normally that high of a point per minute average, if you put him at the center position, it should increase. On FanDuel, another lock, if you will, 3,600. Or when I say I just mean he appears to be. Right? If he gets into foul trouble against Brolo, any shit can really matter. But assuming he is the guy, and looking at this roster, I don't even know who's going to be playing center. Right? Like, they're going to be real small. Real small. But Kuroix would be like the cash game guy. And on DraftKings, he's still fairly priced. The Power 4 eligibility is clutch over there. Because they have him as center. If he was center only, that would suck. But I think Dante Hall is the backup center. Yeah, DraftKings has him listed as center. So he's the backup center. So again, what you need to, if you're doing a bunch of teams with Kuroix, one of these guys should do really well. Because again, regardless of the talent of the players, number one, we're talking about roles where the main people who the offense is focused around aren't there. Number two, you still got to play the minutes. They still have a full game they have to play. And it's possible everybody gets somewhere in the mid-20s, just let everybody play, but it's more likely that a certain group or at least a few people are going to get a lot of minutes and get an opportunity to do a little bit more. That's how I see it. But I do like Kuroix. I personally prefer TLC of the shooting guard group, and I prefer Chiozza. But you can certainly play your Tyler Johnsons if you feel differently. Your who's the other one? Garrett Temples, if you feel differently. On DraftKings, not as much as a deal. It's a matter of price. And from a pricing perspective, I think Chiozza's price is still fairly reasonable. I think TLC's price, even though it may seem crazy, is fairly reasonable simply because I expect him to play a ton of minutes. And then Kuroix. Kuroix is the one on DraftKings that makes the most sense from a pricing standpoint. And the other guys, you just mix them in. It's possible that Musa gets more run. He's min price on DraftKings. But you're still kind of guessing. And you don't want to overcommit to the first game. We have 6 games and we have some good games. So we'll see. We'll wait for a lineup to kind of get posted and see what happens. A lot going on. Appreciate those of you who are pouring in. Please hit the like button. Daniel D, what's happening, bro? We are manning through this tropical storm shit in New Jersey. There's shit falling everywhere. My pool is taking a beating with leaves. I keep hearing shit falling on my roof. Power going in and out. But as long as we got power, we will continue to move on with the stream. And we're going to talk about the other side here, the Milwaukee side. So there's potential for Milwaukee to sit maybe Giannis or something like that. Bledsoe is supposed to come back. I have to make an adjustment to his projections as well, which I'm going to do right now while I'm with you guys. I'm actually going to make these adjustments. These projections are available for download at WiseTake.com. Our cheat sheets are based off the projections as well. So when we make updates to cheat sheets, they don't look like this for those of you they don't look like this. They're just regular projections that you can download, upload into an optimizer, or just see if you want to see what players rank the best on a point per dollar scale or raw point scale. You can just look at them. But just so you know what these projections are. WiseTake Nation. So, Bledsoe, from what I understand, is going to play. The report that I saw was he was going to play very limited minutes. It matters because on FanDuel he's very cheap. He's like 4.7. On DraftKings at 6.1, unless you know he's full running, you know it's not like a. I don't think it's gonna cry. It's not like a TJ Warren situation where you're expecting to go for 60, right? But on FanDuel at 4.7, if you didn't know that information, that could hurt you. But he's playing very little minutes, right? From what we understand. Curious to see what the deal is with Giannis. If Giannis were to sit, I mean, listen, these guys are all in phenomenal spots, and you can see I was hesitant with their minutes. I kind of gave them all on the lower end because, number one, this game has an 18-point spread, should be a blowout, without a doubt. But if we get Giannis ruled out or something like that, I still think it'll be a blowout, but that's obviously going to make the Milwaukee guys more interesting. It's going to make guys like Ersan Ilyasova more interesting. Potentially Marvin Williams more interesting, or at least one of those guys, right? Chris Middleton, if he were to play, would go from an average play on FanDuel at 6.9, not a great play on DraftKings at 7.9, to a whole lot better of a play because we know Bledsoe is going to be limited, and they said that he's going to play very short minutes. That's what they keep saying. And then if there was no Giannis, then you would expect Middleton to take every shot while he's on the court. So there'll be more to look at if that happens. Assuming everybody's in, it's hard to get too committed to this. Giannis is in a phenomenal spot, but how long is Giannis going to even play if he is ruled in? Revenge spot for Brook Lopez. Again, if Giannis is out, that'd be a little more interesting. I mean, either way, he's in a great spot. He's going up against Kuroic. And Brook Lopez, man, he might not be the big banging out down low type center, that traditional type center, but he is a big fucking guy. Like, he's huge. So these are all things to consider. But until we get the news, I'm not, willing to overcommit, if you will. Let's move on to the next game. We got the Dallas Mavericks against the Sacramento Kings. It's a 2:30 start. 236.5 total, which I believe is the second highest on the board aside from the Portland-Houston game, which we'll talk about later. That's the game of the night. But this one seems to be pretty good, too, from a fantasy perspective, everything. Starting with the Dallas side. So, Luka Doncic in a phenomenal spot. Him and Porzingis, man. Porzingis has looked awesome. He's looked really good. Just a man, doing dirty burgers all day. Porzingis has gone for 70 against Houston and then 52 against Phoenix. He's just been awesome. He's 9K against another team that struggles with bigs. I got no issues with Porzingis. He's shooting like 50% from the field. And anybody who was a Knicks fan or anybody who's followed Porzingis knows that he's going to have a day where he's not really shooting because he does take a lot of perimeter shots for a big man. And he's going to have a day where he's not shooting well and it's going to suck, especially when he's just expensive. But he has been playing really well. Luka Doncic, much more consistent because he also gets other peripherals, pretty much everything, rebounds, assists. He's also shot fairly well from the field. Against Phoenix, he had 19 free throws, made 18 of them. Double-digit assists in both games. He was 2 rebounds away from a triple-double. Against Phoenix, he got a triple-double in that overtime game against Houston. Yes, that game went to overtime. Usage rate has been a well over 30. Last game was 37. Luka's one of the top studs on the slate. He's underpriced on DraftKings at 10.7. Probably underpriced on FanDuel at 11K. When these guys are playing, I'm never that interested in their teammates. You got Kleber, who's very cheap on FanDuel at 4K. There's options. Trey Burke has been getting some run, but on a 6-game slate, I'm probably looking elsewhere for value. I come here. It's Porzingis and Luka. I prefer Luka over Porzingis today, as I do most days. I think Luka's underpriced, and I think Kristaps is a little overpriced based off like consistency, right? Like how consistent they are, right? But this game looks pretty good. The Kings side, I'm a lot more interested in as a whole. Like the Kings have always been like a stackable team in fantasy. They don't play very good defense. They're pretty good offensively. And in this particular, the most important aspect of this is they're all priced low. Now, the minutes for these guys have been a little inconsistent and hard to gauge. That's a Luke Walton thing. He did the same thing when he was the coach for the Lakers, and it was extremely annoying. We'll start off with De'Aaron Fox. Keep in mind that the Kings did just get blown out by Orlando. Against the Spurs in a close game, De'Aaron Fox played 38 minutes and had a 40% usage rate. I do like De'Aaron Fox. He projects really well for us on both sides. I like De'Aaron Fox quite a bit today. He could be a little inconsistent at times, right? Against Orlando, we put up a 20. Put up a 54 against the Spurs in that first game. But I expect this to be a game they get up for. And Dallas, I feel like Dallas has a hard time. They're a good team with Luka and Porzingis, but they have a hard time putting people away because of their defense, right? It just seems like even in that game against Houston, they kind of let Houston creep back in. They just couldn't stop. Now, Houston's a bad example because they're one of the best offenses in the league. But I do think, like, I do feel comfortable when I take teams in Dallas's game against Dallas because I feel like they struggle to blow teams out. And this is only a 5.5 point spread. But yeah, De'Aaron Fox I like a lot. Rashawn Holmes has been killing me. I've had some really good teams where I really could have done some work if he would have just got his shit together. He just continues to just screw me. 24 minutes. So the minutes aren't an issue. The usage has been an issue. 14, 13. He's just not getting it done, which is annoying. Last year, he had pretty good history against Dallas when he played. Earlier this year, he played 32 minutes. Not exactly the same. Had 4 fouls, right? Could be matched up with Porzingis a lot. But the price is reasonable for the upside. We know he's got 40-point upside. I don't know if he's out of shape or what it is. On FanDuel at 4.9 is pretty attractive because he's power forward. DraftKings, they make it tough because he's center. Taking away that power forward eligibility was kind of big. Buddy Hield and Bogdanovic, I always set a rule to play one or the other. Obviously, Bogdan is the one you're going to lean towards because he's starting. His minutes seem a little more solidified. In fact, Buddy Hield has not played. He played 20 minutes in 2 straight games. But Buddy Hield, for the record, his usage rate on the court in those 20 minutes, 35, 33.5. So he's got the entire second unit to himself. And the reason he's sucked is because he's been inefficient. 2 for 13 from the field, 1 for 8 from 3, 5 for 13 from the field, 2 for 7 from 3. He's going to have a game where he is actually hitting shots. And when that happens, his coach, Luke Walton, is going to leave him in the game a little bit longer, and he's going to explode. With that said, I always set that rule for Bogdan and Buddy Hield. Give me one, not both, because I think if Hield is playing really well, it's going to impact how much Bogdanovic is on the court. So Bogdanovic is your first stop because he's the starter, and his minutes, again, are a little bit more solidified, a little bit more guaranteed. He's played 32 minutes against San Antonio, 31 against Orlando. But we're talking about a 21.3% usage rate and 18.7, which aren't necessarily bad, but we just said Buddy Hield is like double that. He's got the whole second unit to himself. So I always put in that rule for those two. And I think, bear with me here, but I do think I want to raise Buddy Hield's projection just a bit. And like I said, if you're using an optimizer with these rules, with these projections, I mean, you want it to know that you only want one of these guys, right? You want it to know that you only want one. I'll do this because I do think they negatively correlate, but they're both in pretty good spots here against Dallas. One of these guys probably going to do well. It's a revenge spot for Harrison Barnes. Just not really a dude that does a whole ton. In general, he can play big minutes. Against Orlando, only got 24. Again, that game kind of got out of hand. Against San Antonio, played 37. But he had an 8.6 usage rate. The price is relatively low, so I'm okay if you want to take some shots on him, but he's never going to be my favorite. FanDuel at 4-4 at a small forward position is probably where he has the most use. But again, I'm never going to, like, in a game stack situation, you need a fourth king or whatever, sure. But I'm never going to go over the top. Going back to Rashawn Holmes, I did just get news that Alex Len is ruled in now. So Alex Len is going to play. I'll have to make an adjustment to those minutes. He's been reconditioned, so I don't think he'll play a ton. But that's going to cut into the minutes of Rashawn Holmes. And potentially it could cut into the minutes of Nemanja Bjelica, who we're going to talk about next, who's also pretty cheap and has not played particularly well. So Bjelica played 30 minutes against the Spurs, had a 12.7% usage rate, only put up a 25, which at this price on both sites, you'd be okay with that. But in that second game against Orlando, only played 20 minutes, put up a 7.25. You'd be pretty pissed about that. So this is a very game stackable team, but right now it seems to be kind of like who is the one standing out? It's basically Fox, who we talked about, the usage rate was great. It's basically Buddy Hield on the second unit. Those are the two main guys that are doing dirties. But again, the pricing of the teammates do make Sacramento very stackable. So I think that is on the table. And you can see even for us, a lot of these guys project well enough where they would make cuts and they should make the team. So it's either, if you're picking one-offs, it's Fox, it's Hield, or Bogdanovic. If you're doing stacks, you go ahead and play four of them together. Just set a rule for Hield and Bogdanovic to only play one. Boom. Explain that like a straight G. Brian Garcia in the chat talking about Brook Lopez. Would Brook Lopez be one of the first starters to get pulled in a blowout? Probably. In blowouts is a good opportunity for coaches to get their backup some more time. And you do have another veteran guy like Robin Lopez behind Brook Lopez who you could afford to get more time. So it's definitely possible. But it's also possible that they smash so hard, It's also possible that they smash so hard that even if they get limited minutes, they still do dirty. Just hit that like button, guys. I see a bunch of you in here, but the likes aren't as high as they should be right now. Something wrong with that. Hit the like. Brian Garcia, Michael Carter-Williams. Michael Carter-Williams. We'll talk about him. Joe K, what's up, man? What's up? How do you feel about Musa and Anderson? That's value. Joe, that's a great question, Joe. That's a great question, man. He asked about Musa, some of the other Brooklyn net value players. Those are going to be the ones that most people don't play. Now, depending on what the starting lineup is whenever that's released, that'll give us more information, right? All we really know right now is that Kurucs is going to start at center. But we're still waiting on a lot of information. Still waiting on a starting lineup. If they're not in the starting lineup, they won't be popular because people are going to just rush and play the ones who are starting. I'm okay with them. If they're starting, then I agree. They're going to get more minutes, right? The concern is you don't know how many minutes they're going to get. So it's a risk. If you're comfortable with that risk, they have the potential. Again, this game has to be played, right? It can't end early. They're going to play full minutes. So some people on the Brooklyn Net team, even if they suck and get their ass kicked, some people are going to do well. And the obvious choices are going to be the starters. The people who want to take a chance. There's going to be somebody on that bench, maybe two people on that bench, maybe three people on that bench who do really well. And that's the challenging part. But I think Musa and who's the other one? And Anderson are capable. I'm just unsure of how many minutes, how much opportunity they'll actually get unless they start. That's all. All right, I'm going to hop out of the chat back into, and we're going to move on to the next game. I got to keep things rolling because I still got to build teams and shit. And I'm just praying I don't lose power. For those of you who don't know, could lose power any minute because we are going through that tropical storm in Jersey right now, and it's wild. The Suns and the Clippers, we have a 229.5 total. The Clippers open up -9. They're up to -8.5. Start with Phoenix. Devin Booker. Devin Booker's fine. I think he's going to draw a tough matchup between Paul George, between Kawhi Leonard. Right, those are two of the best defenders in the game. And Devin Booker is one of the best scorers in the game. There's no doubt in my mind that some of those guys are going to be tasked with covering him. I'm okay with him. His price has come down on FanDuel a little bit. I'm okay with him, but I think Ayton is the one who's in a straight up smash spot, right? Come on, clickety click clack. Yeah, DeAndre Ayton played 21 minutes against Dallas because he had 5 fouls. He played 35 minutes against Washington in their opener and went for 49. 35 minutes. So I'm actually going to give a boost. I'm going to adjust his projection right now. I do like Ayton. The Clippers right now against bigs, they've been bad against bigs all season. And now you factor in they got like Zubac and some of those guys playing center. Like you don't even have I forgot the other guy's name. But yeah, I like Ayton a lot today. I think he's underpriced. On DraftKings, they gave him power forward eligibility, which is pretty fucking sick. Oh yeah. I don't mind Rubio at 6K on FanDuel, on 6-7 on DraftKings. I'm concerned about Patrick Beverley defense. But he makes for a really nice pairing with DeAndre Ayton, and that cannot be denied. I don't care about matchup when it comes to like that situation. If I'm looking for correlation or game stacking or whatever the case may be, Rubio played 32 minutes against Dallas. That was promising. The usage rate was higher, probably because Ayton only played 20 minutes against Washington. He played 29 minutes, had a 20% usage rate. Someone for 34, but obviously we prefer if he does a little more than that. So Ricky Rubio I'm okay with, and the price is reasonable, but it's nothing to go crazy about, right? Nothing to backflip over. Same deal. We got, Cam Johnson, Bridges, all these guys. Cameron Payne is an interesting value play. Again, you got the Brooklyn guys that are going to get the minutes, but their prices have been increased. Cameron Payne is extremely cheap and has played really well in 20 minutes. His usage rate when he's on the court looks well. If you think this game's going to be a blowout, he could certainly get more run. And we have a starting lineup for the Brooklyn Nets here. We've got Tyler Johnson, Garrett Temple. We've got TLC, Lance Thomas, and Kuroix. So I would expect with that, Chioza's ownership is going to drop because I think people are going to get nervous with him not starting. I still like him, but obviously I wouldn't be willing to take as high of an exposure. This makes Tyler Johnson the absolute chalk on FanDuel at 4K. On DraftKings, I think people will debate it because he's 6'6". I do like him over there if he's a starting point guard. Garrett Temple and TLC I like. So I guess my favorites right now from Brooklyn are going to be, at least for cash games, are going to be Johnson. I prefer TLC to Temple, but they're both okay in cash, and then Kuroix. On FanDuel, Johnson, TLC, Kuroix, because I don't want to sacrifice the other shooting guard slot for Temple. I prefer TLC. It's just Temple's fine. He's going to shoot and all that stuff. He's got more usage, but I think TLC will too, and I prefer him. But that's it for Phoenix. Let's go to the Clippers. I think this is a really good Zubac spot. He's at center. He's 4,500, 4,200 on FanDuel. So we have plenty of value today all around. Lou Williams is questionable. He may finally get a chance to play. If that happens, it's going to make things a little more murky, right? May make things a little bit more murky, more strange, if you will. But I still got power? I do. Joe K, man, shout out to you, man. Appreciate it, man. Joe K with the super chat. Much appreciated, man. That stuff really helps us out. We never ask for nothing, man. You guys just hitting the like button is enough, but we do always appreciate, when people step it up, man. Keep us rolling. Frank Corona, 3 cheap Nets fine. Yeah, I think it's fine. Absolutely. I think that on FanDuel, you're probably going to need them on FanDuel. They're so cheap that if you don't have them, you can really get hurt because they're going to be popular. DraftKings is where they've tempted you and they're making you debate things. And you got to decide who's expensive, right? Because like Kuroix is the only one that's actually cheap. Even Chioza is like 5'3". And he's not even starting in this situation. Going back to the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are your first choices. If Lou Williams is back, that could impact some usage rates there. It could impact Reggie Jackson's minutes, Pat Bev. If Lou Will comes back, it's going to shake things up. Now, they're still missing Montrezl Harrell. That is why I still like Zubac. But I would probably at this point pick one of Kawhi or PG. I always lean towards PG. Number one, he's always cheaper. Well, that's really it because he's cheaper. But I do think that Zubac, as good as a spot this is for Ayton, it's just as good of a spot for Zubac, man. The Suns are terrible against bigs too. Ayton is a horrible defender, horrendous. He can do the dirty on offense. He is terrible on defense. Not overly thrilled about too much here. Marcus Morris, don't be fooled by the decent projection. Remember, his usage rate is way different on this team than it was earlier in the season on the Knicks. So if Lou Williams is out, I'm cool with Reggie Jackson again for value. I'm good with even maybe some Pat Bev. I think that Kawhi and PG become better plays at that point if Lou is out. Seth Curry just got ruled out. Anyone wondering? That makes things a little easier on the Dallas side. Still don't like sifting through that bullshit, though, me personally. But yeah, Zubac is probably my favorite play at this point. And Zubac hasn't really played any minutes. I think it's because his matchups have just been a little too tough for his talent level. Right? Maybe we'll look into it right now. Zubac played 24 minutes against New Orleans. That game was a blowout. He's had 4 fouls in 2 of the games against the Lakers, man. The Lakers are just too big for him. Like, I know he's a big guy, but he's soft. The Lakers are just too big. He had 15 minutes, 4 fouls. Didn't do well. But 24 minutes against New Orleans, and he went for 27 DraftKings points. I think he could do better today in this spot. Let's keep it rolling. We've got the Orlando Magic and the Indiana Pacers. We've got a 225 total up from 223. We have a Magic opened up -2. They're up to -1.5. This is a back-to-back for the Pacers, right? Phenomenal spot for Vooch. The price for Vooch on both sides seems kind of wacky. And I know Paulie, just a little, Paulie writes the Core Plays article at WiseTake.com. I know Paulie wrote a little something on Vooch. Vooch played 27 minutes against Brooklyn, 24 minutes against Sacramento. They were a part of pretty much 2 blowouts to start. So he hasn't really had an opportunity to show us what full run looks like. But the last time he played Indiana, which was earlier this season, he played 35 minutes, went for 51. Which would make him just way too underpriced at this point. I mean, he projects for almost 6x, and we have him only projected in the 46 range. So he looks like a phenomenal play. On FanDuel, Aaron Gordon looks like a pretty awesome play at 5.6. 7.4 on DraftKings. It's nothing like I wouldn't run from it, but I'm not begging to play him. But keep in mind, Jonathan Isaac is out. Keep that in mind. I actually do think Gordon is a pretty interesting play, especially if they let him play more power forward. With Isaac there, they've kind of flip-flopped 3 and 4. But with Isaac gone, I would assume Gordon's going to have to play a little bit more, assuming the game is close. I mean, even here, so Gordon against Brooklyn played 26 minutes, and his usage rate was 15.8. Against Sacramento, he played 24 minutes because it was a blowout. His usage rate was 26.6 minutes, so I do expect his usage to be higher. That I do expect. So I think Aaron Gordon is a phenomenal FanDuel play, and I think he's a fine tournament play. I prefer Vooch on DraftKings because you're getting so close to Vooch. I'd rather just take Vooch, but Aaron Gordon is also fine. But I prefer him on FanDuel. That price is just way too cheap for him on FanDuel. In terms of value, James Ennis, whatever you want to call him, his minutes probably a little bit more solidified in that 20-something range. His usage rate was really good against the Kings. He was just terrible. It 1 for 7 from 3, but the usage rate wasn't that bad. Again, Isaac is out, so we got some shoes we have to fill, right? We got some shoes we have to fill. We'll keep rolling on. Terrence Ross, 5,300 on DraftKings. His usage rate was 29.7 in that last game against Sacramento. The game was a blowout. 23 minutes in both games, so the minutes are an issue. But with Isaac out and Isaac got hurt during the game, I expect Terrence Ross to get more opportunities. So he's okay. Evan Fournier